The sinking of the Titanic was a tragic and unforgettable event that has captured the imagination of people around the world for over a century. In the aftermath of the disaster, a number of films were produced, but one of the most famous was the 1912 movie Saved from the Titanic, starring Dorothy Gibson. In the aftermath of the disaster, a number of films were produced, but one of the most famous was the 1912 movie Saved from the Titanic, starring Dorothy Gibson. Dorothy Gibson was an American actress who had already made a name for herself in the film industry when the Titanic sank. She was aboard the ship with her mother, Pauline, returning from a trip to Europe. They were both fortunate enough to survive the disaster and were among the few first-class passengers who managed to make it into lifeboats. After arriving in New York, Gibson was approached by the film company Eclair, who saw an opportunity to capitalize on her experiences. They quickly produced a short film that was loosely based on her own experiences, and it became a sensation. Saved from the Titanic was released just weeks after the disaster, and it was a commercial success, drawing large crowds to theaters across the country. The film begins with Gibson and her mother aboard the Titanic, enjoying the luxurious surroundings and the company of other passengers. However, disaster strikes, and the ship hits an iceberg. Gibson and her mother are shown scrambling to get into a lifeboat, while chaos and panic reign all around them. The film ends with Gibson being rescued by the Carpathia, a ship that arrived on the scene to pick up survivors. Saved from the Titanic was significant not just for its commercial success, but for its historical importance. It was the first film to be made about the Titanic, and it offered a glimpse into what it was like to be aboard the ship on that fateful night. Gibson's first-hand experiences added a sense of realism to the film that resonated with audiences, many of whom were still grappling with the enormity of the tragedy. Sadly, the film itself has been lost to history. No copies are known to exist, which means that we can only imagine what it must have been like. However, Gibson's legacy endures. She continued to act in films throughout the 1910s and 1920s, and even started her own production company. But she will always be remembered for her role in Saved from the Titanic, and for the glimpse she provided into one of the most significant events of the 20th century.